Welcome to the third video in our series on NATO 1961, the Berlin Crisis, MDG games, designed by Kerry Anderson. This game simulates a potential World War III conflict in 1961. It also includes a pre-war period, or an escalation period before that war starts, which could cause many different situations when the war potentially kicks off. It starts in 1961, before the Berlin Wall has been built by the Warsaw Pact or the Soviet Union, and during the pre-war period the players have a chance to do a multiple number of what are called aggressions. We covered this in the previous videos, but just as a quick review, game starts at crisis with East German refugees streaming across West Berlin and into West Germany, causing the East German government to be unstable, and then potentially the Soviets can build a wall to stop that, and then beyond that different aggressions can be done by either player in response to what the other does. So here we're starting in the crisis mode. We can then go up to the incident mode. Break down the wall would cause it, any of these. And then in the incident mode, a number of other aggressions can be used to potentially relieve Berlin or pre-position for an upcoming general war. The scope, though, is still East Germany and West Berlin. And here are the limitations in this pre-war period. Then that can escalate to a limited war, once again still confined to East Germany and West Berlin. Comments allowed, though. This could be a period where NATO, perhaps short of a general war, decides to attack across the wall into East Germany in an attempt to reach Berlin and relieve them if their supplies have been cut off by Warsaw Pact. Otherwise, it could potentially escalate to general war, and now everything on the board and all the forces, all the countries now are involved. And there you've got your typical conventional war. But then either player can decide to escalate to tactical nuclear war. Tactical nuclear weapons then are used to destroy or degrade the enemy's capabilities, and that could even ultimately be escalated to strategic nuclear war, mainly using to decapitate the other player or attack their population centers in an attempt to break the national will of countries from continuing the fight. Now, where that plays in, a critical part of the game, along with the conventional battle, is going to be this stability track. Right? There's two components, the world opinion track and each country's stability. So as certain events occur, they get put on the chart here, and as they incur more of these in the pre-war periods, from riots or from from riots or protests, this increases on the track, and then they go through potential cases where they start experiencing desertions in their ground forces, where one unit per turn is reduced strengths. That can escalate to a breakdown, a B for the country, where 1d6 of units are reduced strengths, and then ultimately collapse, where all of their units experience a step loss and they stop fighting, and the enemy player gets a good number of victory points for that country's population. So during the pre-war period, like I said, riots and protests, etc., rolls on the world opinion table. Once the war begins, losses start adding to this chart, as well as losing victory point hexes, dense urban hexes. So potentially with this track, you could lose the game in the pre-war period. I'll show you that in a sec. Here's the world opinion track. This is where we're tracking that. As certain aggressions are done or rolls are done on the world opinion table, this can shift in favor of one side or the other. And then if we go over here and look at the world opinion table, there is a DRM, dice roll modifier, depending on where the world opinion is here. So like it's right now Warsaw Pact, and if it got all the way to -5, it's entirely possible if you roll a 2 and subtract 5, you end up with a -3 and NATO concedes. Or the other option, world opinion goes over to the NATO side all the way up to +5. Warsaw Pact could concede in German reunification. And we see lesser items here. Revolts in Poland, revolts in Czechoslovakia, China denounces. Here we see the riots, potentially the protests, accident. Things get out of hand and it escalates to the next level. So conceivably you could be in general war and you roll this and you're in tactical nuclear war. Or worse than that, you're in tactical nuclear war, you get an accident, you end up in global thermonuclear wars. So this table here potentially could end the game, depending on what's going on with world opinion. If not, though, also world opinion adds victory points to whatever side its world opinion is for at the time, too. So this is very important for whether your countries stay in the game or not, and whether you get victory points or whether you're potentially on the world opinion table get a chance to win the game outright from that die roll. So let's review where we're at from the previous video. We've gone about 2 turns through the pre-war period, maybe 1.5. The following events occurred, and I'll turn the rules and charts back on. So during the crisis period, the first thing the Warsaw Pact player did was build the wall. So now the refugees are not streaming, and there's not an automatic 1 casualty on the stability track to East Germany every turn. NATO, the US in response, activated the National Guard. This is kind of forward thinking to ensure replacements will be flowing 7 turns into a general war if that's where it escalates to. So in response, and then NATO follows with their turn. It's, one player picks an aggression and the other player can respond, and the next player picks an aggression, etc. So NATO then in their portion of the turn went ahead and did something called break down the wall, which didn't happen in real life. And the wall now is down again. East German refugees can cross over to West Berlin and West Germany, but it does escalate our situation to the incident, which opens up a whole bunch of other choices for each side. So in response to that, Warsaw Pact picked major maneuvers, and we'll see in a second on the board that they moved a number of tank divisions to the edge of the border in position to either cross over in a general war or take Hanover and drive to the Ruhr, or if NATO tries to do a relief convoy, I think that's what they call armed convoy, then these tank divisions will be in the way. In response to that, then after that, the Warsaw Pact followed that with mobilization, which starts the reinforcement track. The reinforcements, M+1, M+2, they start flowing in the next pre-war turn continuing. And NATO, in response, not much they could do but mobilize themselves. All right, so now both sides are mobilizing. And just to show you what that looks like first here are the armored divisions that the Soviets moved up to the border in preparation for blocking or attacking. And then if we look at the turn record track, we see that starting in the next pre-war turn, it'll go here, and the Soviets will get their airborne divisions first. And then as we move along this track, all these forces, NATO forces are up here, not a lot, but the Warsaw Pact side, there are a lot. So they're going to be mobilizing relatively quickly before the start of the war. So right here from the outset, we see the complexion of the start point is not like they were all in their barracks and it's bolt from the blue. We're starting to see the reinforcements flowing in ahead of the war, starting next turn, pre-war turn, and troops positioning themselves on the edge of the border. So our next step here, after both sides mobilizing, now it's NATO's pre-war turn 2 phase, and NATO, looking at the board now, decides they need to mobilize, they need to do major maneuvers to get their troops up to the front. At this point in the game, the scope we saw covered just East Germany and West Berlin, or Berlin. Now, for moving these troops for a major mobilization, major maneuvers, you roll 2d6, and then the troops at the moment can move within their zones or their sector. See here, the French sector is just down here. The US sector, it's the dotted red lines, we covered that in a previous video too, is here. The British sector is here, and West Germans can actually move anywhere in all of West Germany. One of the other aggressions that can be done later is called forward position, not deployment, and units can cross military districts, so they can cross districts at will. This one American recon unit up here is not in the American sector, though it is free to move. So what we'll do, and we see the riot here in Nuremberg from the pre-war period, That may have to be quelled. So NATO's response is major maneuvers. First thing that happens is anytime you do an aggression, the world opinion track shifts 1 in the favor of your opponent. Now if you do an aggression for the first time, neither player has done it yet, like when the Warsaw Pact did the major maneuvers, nobody had done major maneuvers yet, that would cause a roll on the world opinion track. But since the Warsaw Pact has already done major maneuvers, there won't be a roll here. So that's set. All we need to do now is roll 2d6 and see how many units we get to move. 10. Nice roll. So working north to south, just looking at things. First off, I've got an uncovered dense urban hex. That's a victory point hex. Probably not a good thing to have. So I'm going to move him, this Panzer Grenadier division, down to cover that hex. And then that's 1. But this port is a victory point place also, so I need to cover that in case something happens. But it's easier to cover now, closer to the border. So what we can do, this is a West German police unit. It has to stay in dense urban hexes, but what I could do to screen the border is move 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, that's an Iron Curtain hex. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So he can get there, or he can get there. But I think this person is this Panzer division is probably better here. So I will move the U.S. Recon Brigade. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and that gives them 2 or 3 hexes to attack from. But this only gives them 1, so I'm going to leave him there. Just looking at zones of control, somebody can move here and adjacent, somebody can move here. If I moved him here, there'd be too many hexes. So, zones of control, like we talked about in the rules overview, they are leaky. If I start my turn here, I can move here. And then the next turn I can move here. So I can get around. Something to be careful about. So looking here, I've done 1, 2, well, I do want to move this unit up, but I don't want to move them up too far. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I get a defensive benefit there. See what that looks like. That's rough. Shift 1 to the left. That's a good benefit. Shift 1 to the left on the CRT. So I will move him one, 2. Yeah, I could move him here, but then he's exposed. This does a better line. Now I definitely want to reinforce Hanover. I've only got that 2-4 there, so I will move him up 1, 2, 3. So we had 10, we're up to 1, 2, 3, 4. Looking here, I only have to defend East Germany. That's 4. And he's West German. He can move anywhere. 1, 2, 3, 4. A little forward, but I've got the defensive modifiers, so that's a good thing. I'll leave him here. That's 5 units. Oh, that's nice units there. So that's 5, but the other thing I'm going to do is take this as 6, so he can quell the riot. And when I played my previous test game of just the conventional war, the Soviet airborne dropped right into Nuremberg and captured it. There's a dense urban hex here, so I definitely do want to garrison Nuremberg. So I'm up to 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, I'm up to 6. So, where else can I forward deploy? This would be a nice spot if I could get somebody there. They could come through here, so this is a prime spot. So, I'll move him here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Now the only danger with these is they are not under the Nike umbrella, but I will forward deploy them anyhow. So that's 7. This will be 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This will be 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then I've got one more unit. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So reviewing, I think I moved 1, 2, 3, 4. I didn't move him. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So I've got 9 units. I've moved, and I can move 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so I have moved 10. So that's NATO's major maneuvers. That's done. I'll clear the movement trails now. And I need to roll on the riot table. So when there are riots, here's the riot suppression table. These are the possibilities. If I use the WBK, if there was a police unit there, which there isn't, unfortunately, that's like this one. See, that's WBK. Then I would roll on this column. So the worst that can happen if the police quell the riot is a -1 to world opinion, which isn't great if I roll a 1. See, if I use the military, which is what I am using, it's a Panzer Grenadier, I could incur on a 1, -1 world opinion, and a casualty and instability, or I could just get a -1, but then the riot will be gone. And the riot effectively means the enemy player's zone of control is considered there, and if the game had suddenly ended, they'd get victory points. So let's roll 1d6, see what happens. 6. That's a good roll. So no detrimental effect, and the riot is quelled. Alright, so NATO has succeeded in moving up to forward positions, starting to move up to forward positions. In the next few turns, reinforcements, and they can move more. The only units I could move, though, were US, UK, West German, and French. Unfortunately, the French are somewhat confined to this sector, or France, so I can't get them all the way up to the front yet. Here they'd be stuck here. So that's NATO's choice for pre-war turn 2 for their phase. Now it's the turn for Warsaw Pact to figure out their response to NATO's choice. So looking back at this, what will they do? And what they're going to do is actually up here, activation. This means all zones of control turn on. It doesn't escalate to incident, but also this is an aggression, so it will shift the world opinion in NATO's favor. So if we look at this also, when they do activation, this means now their zones of control are active. And that means Berlin is isolated. So, and what happens when Berlin is isolated, West Berlin is isolated, is now West Germany gets a casualty point every turn. That condition is like that. Or not dealt with, or we escalate to limited war and it doesn't really matter anymore. So they choose activation. First let's shift world opinion. And then we will get a world opinion roll because that hasn't been chosen yet by either side. So we go to the charts, go to world opinion, and right now we're at a -2 on the die roll. Roll 2d6, let's see what happens. 7, 6, 5, and nothing happens. Okay, so good roll there. Nothing negative happens. That's probably not what Warsaw Pact wanted. They would have liked maybe a 2 down to 0, and France can withdraw, or UK, their brigades, because I can tell you from a previous game, conventional war only, it took 3 turns to clear out Berlin after the war started. So that's set. Well, I did it again, so I seem to keep doing this. There we go. Alright, so we rolled a 7, and we did a -2, and we got a 5, so there's no effect. So Berlin is isolated, and unless NATO does a proper response, they'll start having 1 casualty per turn for West Germany. So now it is pre-war turn 3, and it's M0 on the turn track. So what we need to do now is pull up the turn record track, and M0 is here. And that means now that these airborne divisions are available. Now I could put them on the map, I could maneuver them, but there is also strategic reserve, and airborne units in strategic reserve can conduct airborne drops from there. So we're going to put these units in strategic reserve for now, and that would be right here, just off the board. And now they need to choose, Warsaw Pact needs to choose what they want to do, if anything. So they will choose, looking back at our chart here, hopefully I'll remember to turn it off next time. Here are the choices that they have. And right now Berlin is isolated. Arms buildup means I can start rolling for intensive supply, which lets you roll 2d6 on the CRT instead of 1d6. Cross military districts doesn't necessarily apply right now since everybody's restricted to East Germany. Forward positions can enter Iron Curtain hexes. So that means we'll see in a second on the board that gray line that's the Iron Curtain means now the forces can get right up on the edge. Major maneuvers can be used to position more units in forward positions. Or mobilization we've already done. Air war though, we begin rolling for air and cancel the airlift. And limited war, you can escalate, or preemptive attack, go right to general war. Tempting if I'm in a better position than NATO is. So in this case though, what we'll choose is one more turn of major maneuvers. Let's get some more troops up front, and then potentially we'll escalate the war. So looking at the board, let's see, the stability track, first thing we do is, again, world opinion goes this way. But since major maneuvers have been done by both sides, there's no roll on the world opinion track. And I roll my die and decide on 2d6 of units to move up. And if I look at the board, it would be good to kind of get these guys up, although unfortunately now they're late to the party. They can't take advantage of NATO forces being out of position as much as they could. Or we could bring up, well, we could bring these guys up to the border too. I'll probably go with the northern route. So let's see how many troops they get to move. 7. Rolling good here. Alright, sorry about that. I forgot to turn off the chart window. I'm probably not going to use that anymore. So like I said, major maneuvers, Warsaw Pact, 7 units. See up here, they're massing forces, trying to decide between going here or up north to the port. So we brought some East German unit up here, East German division, tank division. We brought a Soviet tank division up here. So that's 1, 2, 1. Yeah, 1 unit. 2 units. 3, 4 units. You can do 3 more. And I was looking, I wanted to check the the terrain effects chart and see rough. Yeah, it does cost 2 MP. So let's see who can get up there the fastest. 1, 2. Yep. Let's move 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 4. So let's move him here. And then move him here. Get this airborne anti-aircraft unit here to provide a shield. So that's 3, 4, 5 units. 6, 7. We're done. So these units are planning on crossing the border here. So that's Warsaw Pact, major maneuvers. Now it's NATO's time, and I'm going to look at this version of the chart so I don't keep forgetting to turn that one off. So what can NATO do in response? The problem right now is Berlin is cut off. Could escalate here to limited war, general war. We're not in a position to do that. Mobilization's already occurred. Major maneuvers can bring up more units. Forward positions. It looks like NATO is going to be on the defensive here, so this is probably not a good choice. Deployment across districts. That's where we can start bringing the French up. But more importantly, if I don't do something about the Berlin being isolated, West German casualties will go up 1 every turn. So we will NATO will choose airlift. Now for some reason that's an aggression, so it does shift world opinion. I'll go back and check, but I do think I did it wrong last time. This should have shifted up to -1 and then -2, so I believe it's here. I'll check. Well, basically what I did when the Warsaw Pact did their thing, I shifted that way instead of that. Should have shifted there, and now this will shift it back to 2. And also, airlift is a new aggression. While only NATO can do it, it does cause a world opinion roll. So we'll look at world opinion. We're at -2, and we'll roll 2d6. Ooh, that's a 1. Oh, that means nothing. Wow, that was close. You start getting lower and lower in rolls. If this had been a 2, for example, with a -2, one of the Berlin brigades would have pulled out. So dodge that bullet. And the airlift is in place, which is a good thing now because that means that they will not have a casualty point for West Germany. Okay, so that was the NATO response. Now NATO can do their part of the turn's aggression if they want to do another one. So, looking back at the world opinion or the chart for escalation, we've done an airlift. We're not in any position to do armed convoy. We could do an arms buildup. We could do the deployment crossing military districts, or we could escalate immediately. Well, since the Berlin crisis is somewhat mitigated, just like in 1949 with the original Berlin airlift, yeah, don't want to do these last 3. We've already mobilized. We could do more major maneuvers, or deployment, or arms buildup. Major maneuvers, deployment, or arms buildup. There, clear that. So if I did major maneuvers, I could get more troops up to the front. This one, this one, this one. Just trying to decide if there's enough units that can be moved. That is a Belgium unit, cannot move him up. But this is a UK unit. It would be nice to get him up. So I think I will go for major maneuvers again. Again, causes a shift, but it has been done before, so no world opinion. And it's time to roll 2d6 to see how many we can do this time. 4. Well, not as good a roll. It would be nice to get somebody there. But let's bring these units in the back up. He's not, well, let's see. If he went this way, he'd go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Nice position. So we'll do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 1 unit. Scroll down here. I think I saw somebody who was, yeah, he's eligible. But they're not coming through Czechoslovakia yet. Unless they go right into general war. And if the war does kick off, 1, 2, 3, 4, they can get there. So we've done 1 unit. It'd be nice to screen Munich. 1, 2, 3, 4. Wow, this map keeps jumping around. So that's 2 units. Who else looks eligible? This is already in a defensive position. This is a strong position because of the river. So we'll move him here. So that's 1, 2, 3. Too bad I can't move him up here. Got 1 more unit to move. That's West German. That's a good unit. Let's get him going. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's major maneuvers again for NATO after the airlift. Bear with me here, just updating my list. So now the last part of pre-war turn 3 is the Warsaw Pact response to the NATO major maneuvers. So let's turn this off. And again, let's pull up the track and see what my choices are. Working down, that's not. Blue means it's only the NATO. Could do arms buildup. Just to understand my response, and then the next turn I get to go again. So I pretty much got 2 aggressions in a row I can choose. Forward positions, do I want to waste it on that? I don't know. Major maneuvers, do I have any more units to bring up? Well, the longer I wait, the more NATO units will be forward positioned. So I think in response, we've got a 1-2 punch here. Arms buildup. That's what we're going to do because we want those attensive attack supplies if we go over to the offensive. So we choose arms buildup, world opinion shifts, but it's also the first time that's been chosen by either side. So I need to roll on the world opinion track, and it's going to be a -2 again. 8 down to 6. Protests in West Germany. How convenient. So world opinion goes -1. And let's see what happens down here. Protest. Add 1 to the casualty list of the affected nation. On top of that. So now West Germany is at 3. The airlift is in place. So that means West German casualty does not occur, the automatic one. Let's do this. Which one did we do? Just so I can write it down. Arms buildup, that's the one they did. Okay, that's good. So now we go into pre-war turn 3. So I want to do one thing first on the turn record track. It is now here. And all these units start appearing. So what do we want to do? Do we want to keep our... Let's look at this again. So our choices are... Escalation, here we are. Now if we go to limited war, I could start attacking Berlin and trying to reduce it and continue to maneuver forces. Or I could do full commitment. Well, first I have to get to limited war. Do I want to go to limited war? My feeling is now we need to accelerate things before NATO gets reinforcements in solid defensive positions. So, and I'd rather use the entire board and all my units. So it's very tempting to skip limited war and go right to general war. So what can I do here? Well, expand war does the same thing too, but we're not there yet. So if I want to get to general war, because NATO will have a response to this, if I go to limited war now, NATO can... All units may enter East Germany, or expand war, or we get into the air combat here, but this is kind of a gray area. And looking at the board, their position is starting to get rather strong. So I think the Warsaw Pact will choose preemptive attack and go right to war. Obviously that's a world opinion roll, but let's do something else here. Oh. I did it again, didn't I? Protests in West Germany should have shifted it this way. Got to get better at that track. Let's see here. So let's look at this. Protests. Protests in West Germany. No, I'm sorry, I did that right. Huh. Well, let's do it this way. There we go. So that is correct. So because they've started the general war, it shifts here, and we roll a -1. See what happens. 3. Ouch. Wow. Automatic escalation. So this is how things can get out of control. That means if we look at the escalation, preemptive attack took us to general war, and the accident escalated to nuclear war. That's scary. see if I can use a miscellaneous marker here. No, can't put it on a chart. So, wow, things are getting out of control, to quote some movies here. So the war has begun, and tactical nuclear weapons are released. Okay, well, that definitely sets us up for when I do the next video. We'll learn about tactical nukes. So maybe that's a good thing, just from the point of view of understanding the game. So at this point, this is where we will stop this video. And what is the situation? We have jumped limited war, general war, and let's pull that up. And we're in nuclear war. So who's going to use nukes? Well, in the next video, we'll cover how tactical nuclear weapons work, and perhaps maybe add in global thermonuclear. And the war at this point has definitely started. So, thanks for your patience. Apologize for the few mistakes with the screen, and your patience for dealing with me as I get more comfortable with this presentation mode. See you in the next video for the outbreak of war, and tactical nuclear weapons may start flying right from the start. Have a good day.